Hey, everybody, and welcome to the Deep Lore Podcast. With me, as always, is my good friend Alex. And
Hello?
today, I wanted to talk to him about net neutrality, because the implications of having a non-neutral net is not a world that I want to live in. Um,
very current as well.
yeah, current events going on right now. This may or may not be released before or after the FCC votes to get
It will
rid
be
of
very close to the
net
vote
neutrality.
when this comes out.
Neutrality.
I don't want net neutrality.
I don't want that net neutrality in my house.
that's what I sound like a grandpa would say. Like, what do these kids talk about this net neutrality?
First it was evolution, and now this net neutrality.
All right, so let's get into
Not
it.
in my backyard. So, what is net neutrality? Oh, I'm glad you asked what net neutrality is. It was coined by Tim Wu in 2003, which that's all I wrote, so I don't even know who that is. He could be a professor of some kind. That would be
He might
nice
just be
if
a
he
guy in the
was.
street that someone asked him, like, what do you
Could
think about
be.
the net?
Could just be some guy that they asked on the Jimmy Fallon show or something that was in the street. I don't know. Anyways, so the idea
he coined the
of
phrase. Okay.
yeah, he coined the phrase. So the idea of net neutrality, basically a neutral net. You want the internet to be a free and open place,
Right.
and especially a free and open place that ISPs, internet service providers, for those of you that don't know, can't block or favor certain content over others, which is pretty much the focus of most of that net neutrality stuff. Have you heard anything about this, or
I know a lot about net neutrality. Yeah.
You've done a bit of research?
I haven't like looked into it a lot, but I mean, net neutrality has been something that the internet's been getting like worked up over for, it's like 10,
this really
8
is
years
the
or
beginning.
something, 6 years.
This is really, we're still in the beginning here. This
Right.
is not anything that's, old news necessarily. It's been
No,
happening.
it's a current event, but there's been so many bills passed that are supposed to,
and it's a past event in a way.
It just keeps
kind of
going.
both sides
They
to
keep
it.
they keep trying to bring out bills and pass things that will.
And even if something gets repealed or something gets passed or whatever, there's going to be attempts at it, in the future as well.
Right.
Especially if it doesn't get repealed. I just don't see them stopping.
No, they're not going to stop anytime soon.
Yeah, these big telecom companies, they're never going to stop trying.
Right.
So basically, we can say that it's the idea that ISPs should just be there to be the bandwidth. They should just be there to be the connection. Right?
Agreed.
That's essentially what you're paying for, is the connection. You're not paying for them to bring you content or to show you content, right? That's your job. Your job is to find the content that you like,
the
and
big
that you
thing
enjoy.
About ISPs and the problems that, not necessarily net neutrality, but just problems with how ISPs regulate in general, is when they lay down that line and they give you internet to your house, they don't have to like burn coal to send you bandwidth. The line's laid down. Obviously they have servers to, send things back and forth, but it's not like they have to expend a resource, or technically maybe if they do, it's very, very minute. And so
electricity maybe, but at that point
it's barely they have these big
your
servers.
Overhead cost anyways.
Exactly.
Your overhead cost is operation.
Yeah, the reason that I can understand why we would pay ISPs this amount of money or that amount of money is the money that they put in to dig the ground up and give you better. If they bring in fiber or whatever,
right, yeah.
Digging that up costs a lot of money, and they need to make the money back. But after it's planted, after it's done in the ground, connected up, it shouldn't cost them barely anything to continue sending you internet after that point. There's a little bit of cost for infrastructure and the database, but overall, I mean, I bet you, I can't say for sure, but I bet you if you paid like $5 a month for internet or something like that, all the people who buy internet would probably already cover the server costs plus like big amounts of profit.
Oh, right, exactly. I mean, it's essentially all greed based. I mean,
right.
Everything in this world is greed based. We shouldn't be surprised.
And I guess part of the
reason,
part of the thing you can look at and understand is you look at these European countries who have like 2, 3, 4 times our speed at like a fifth of the cost. You know,
Romania.
Yeah, it's
Romania has like the best internet in the world, and it's like extremely cheap. They pay like $10 a month or something ridiculous like that.
Yeah, so it's like it's very obvious.
Possible. Yeah,
it's very obvious that we're paying probably, you know, at least like 5 times too much, and we're getting like not enough internet. Now, obviously, theoretically, they'd say, "Oh, well, you don't have the lines laid down to get faster internet, so we'd have to dig that up, and it would cost you money."
That's a load of horse shit.
Well, one of the things is, I believe, and I didn't do the research on this, and this isn't necessarily net neutrality, but one of the things I heard is that they gave like payouts of like $1 or $2 billion to Comcast and all these internet companies to put new internet down, like higher speeds. I don't know if it was fiber at the time, but high speed internet
infrastructure.
Yeah,
for like
and
fiber optics.
Yeah, and they just pocketed the money and walked away with it.
They didn't do anything with it.
It's crazy.
I don't know the origin of that story. Like, I don't know the full facts of that per se, but I have heard that before, and that does irritate the shit out of me because, I mean, these are people that we're paying. You know, I pay $60 a month for 100 gigabits per second, right?
Right.
I mean, that's not, or I'm sorry, 100 megabits per second. Gigabits is insane.
Whoa.
I would be like.
That'd be like
this
100 times fiber, right?
It's uploaded right now. Yeah,
it's uploaded while we're recording.
It's uploaded, before we even finish. No, I have 100 megabit per second internet speed, and I mean the modem I had to rent. I had to rent the modem for like $10.
Yeah, that's ridiculous.
At my last place, which they gave it to me at this place for free, but at my last place, same company and everything, Time Warner. I'm calling you out, Wise. They made me, rent it for like $10 a month or whatever, and we were getting like 300 megabits per second and paying like, it was like $90 or something like that, which is just, I mean, that's just kind of ridiculous.
It really is.
It's good at, the 300 megabits per second, that's fine, but I mean, I'm getting 100 megabits here, and I'm still paying 60.
Yeah, no, it really is ridiculous, and that's the big problem. If you guys aren't living in America and you don't really, I mean, Americans, and like you got sites like Reddit that are huge that are like primarily American based, and they're complaining about ISPs all the time. So you might have heard of this, but we don't really have a choice in what internet company we can use, so they can charge us whatever we want. I can't switch.
They've got a complete monopoly on it. That was one of the other things that I had in my research was just the blatant monopoly that
and it's like Comcast and Time Warner are the biggest ones, and they've basically agreed not to compete, so they have their own pieces of the country, I guess.
Yeah,
you don't have Time Warner and Comcast, you have Time Warner or Comcast. That's it. And like there's
there's Comcast, Time Warner, and AT&T.
Oh yeah, I've heard of AT&T. I've never
here, which and
just you like have you all said, options.
My apartment complex, I can only get Time Warner.
Okay.
So, and that was the same way that it was at my last apartment, because I asked them, I said, I live in Austin. I live in Central Austin.
Right.
What kind of internet can I get?
Right.
Your only option is Time Warner. And one of the craziest things about that is that a lot of the times those apartment complexes, and it doesn't necessarily mean that my apartment complex was doing this, but a lot of those apartment complexes have deals with these telecom companies.
Makes sense.
To provide, a certain amount of bandwidth to their units.
Right.
So like when I was living in San Marcos, which is like an hour away from Austin, I was living in this apartment complex, and they had they were a subsidiary of like Suddenlink or something.
Yeah.
You know, one of these like subsidiaries of a subsidiary of a subsidiary or
Right.
whatever of Time Warner Cable.
Right.
So like we were getting 5 megabit, and we could only get what was supplied to us. It was like high-speed internet included, high-speed internet in quotes.
Right.
It was 5 megabits download, 5 upload. And it was the worst internet I've ever had in my life. It was seriously bad. And there was no option.
Yeah.
Wait, what?
I was going to say, you didn't have internet that was like 124 kilobits back in the day.
Well, I mean, probably, yeah. I don't remember.
It's the first internet you remember that was terrible.
The first internet that I remember having that I had to pay for, that I was
okay.
oh my God, this is like really bad.
Right. How much were you paying for
Because I mean, it was five. Well, it came with the apartment.
Okay.
And there wasn't any way that we could get anything else. They had upgrade packages, but it was like, you know, you could either get like a month upgraded for like, you know, $40 or something to like 20 megabits per second. So you would have to pay like $40 a month for 20 megabits per second. So only 15 increase from the 5.
Right.
Or they would have like these packages that were like pay, you know, $10, and for a night you get 50
oh my God, it's like a hotel internet.
Yeah, it was horrible. It was the worst internet. And even when you upgraded, because I did try, I was like, I have $10. I just want to play
a game,
video games. Like I just need to download these games or whatever. I was so desperate. I spent the $10, and like the internet wasn't even that much faster. I was like, this is 50 megabits per second. This feels like 5.
Yeah, that's the thing.
On?
You might get like 50, but sometimes our friend Anthony, he has issues with his internet where he's supposedly getting, I mean, what is he supposed to be getting? Like 50 or something. He's supposed to be getting a decent amount, but he's always having connection troubles just because like the internet is just bad from an infrastructure standpoint. So they can't even give him stable internet.
The wires or the servers.
And he called him out like 50 times. Good. They've come out to his house like 6 times. No one's fixed anything.
And he lives in a small town where he can't get any other internet besides that. And your only option is that, or like some 4G enabled device.
Right. Or you get, what is it, HughesNet is like the satellite internet.
Right, which is
terrible.
Unusable. Yeah, it's unusable. That's for people that live out in the middle of nowhere, that like all they need to do is be able to get online to like email their family and tell them that they haven't died.
Day 400, still alive.
Yeah. Well, anyways, so ISPs claim that Netflix and Hulu, like streaming sites and all of this, cause like massive congestion on their networks. And so that's why they're so against this net neutrality rule. They want to be able to use things called fast lanes. They've proposed this in the past. They've used this in the past. It's not really anything new. But basically there's 2 like kind of core ideas here that I saw and that I was kind of able to gain from all this. One was that ISPs could raise the subscription costs while keeping the speed the same by offering package deals. Similar to like it would include like separate bandwidth for streaming and browsing audio. So I posted in that project's channel, there's a picture. I want you to go ahead and take a look at that. That very well could be the future for us if this passes, or if this gets repealed. This is actually real. This is Portugal's internet. This is like a way that I guess this is their I can't remember what it's called. It's called like Me or like Mew or something along those lines. If I'm totally wrong about that, write it in the comments. But this is a internet provider in Portugal, and basically they've separated all of these into packages.
It's crazy
So
because it seems like most people would need almost all of these anyway.
Right. That's the thing. If I guess if you're a person that doesn't like music, you know, I guess if you're a heartless human that doesn't like music,
Well,
then you
if
can
you're
skip
a physical music guy, maybe.
Yeah. Well, and I guess if you're, you know, if you just watch music videos on YouTube, maybe you'd only pick the
But
video
still,
thing
it
or
seems
something.
like almost
still,
everyone's going to need messaging, almost everyone's going to need social, and almost everyone's going to need email and cloud.
Right.
And then most people are going to need video. I mean, YouTube's one of the biggest sites on the internet.
And the other question is, how do you start separating all of these? Because there's so many sites on the internet. Like, is there going to be another package for miscellaneous, or
well? And you
like,
think about it. Think about it too. Like video, like Netflix and YouTube could be separated on their own because they probably account for like a huge amount of the bandwidth used. You know what I mean? And email costs almost nothing. It probably does cost virtually nothing. It's probably like 10,000 emails cost a cent.
It's insane how little stuff like email or, you know, even like a Facebook account would cost.
Right.
Like, that it's just complete nonsense. I just wanted you to see that.
Yeah.
I saw it in like a news story. It could be completely, you know, false, but you know, I just saw it when I was browsing, and it that very well could happen. That's basically the idea, is why people are
and that's what
so
I've heard is that
it.
They want to do packages like that, which would be ridiculous. But
so that was the first idea. The second idea was that ISPs could try and foot the bill to companies like Netflix and Hulu by charging to prioritize content through blocking and like deal making,
or just throttling the speeds that you get.
Right.
Unless
so
Netflix
larger
pays.
Content providers can afford to pay for fast lane usage, and they will have an unfair advantage against like smaller
and
competitors.
I'd heard that in the past League of Legends had that problem where they had to pay ISPs to give their players more priority because they were like being kicked down the line to not get very good internet.
And it should never be that way. And this isn't necessarily exactly the same, but they were charging Netflix, like Verizon was charging Netflix, Verizon and Comcast were charging Netflix so that there wouldn't be, like, so that they could resolve video buffering issues. So they were obviously throttling them.
Yeah.
In an attempt to get them to pay out to fix their problem so that people could access the content. Because if people aren't able to view Netflix on their phones or whatever, on their Verizon phones, they're going to stop using Netflix.
Yeah.
You know, like if that's the only way that they can watch it, that is, you know. But so, yeah, basically, in short, if ISPs get their way, it will lead to a layered internet, which is not good. Only those with the most cash can afford to pay for their content distribution, and everybody else is going to get degraded service. That's why people like Mark Cuban can go on to The Blaze and talk about why, you know, why net neutrality is bad, because it doesn't matter to him. If he has to pay for all of those social media packages, he doesn't give a shit.
He's probably getting paid by the ISPs anyway.
He probably, you know, has stake in a lot of the ISPs. You know, that's
the only way anyone would think is good is if they had something to do with the ISPs. It's the only people who benefit from that.
Somebody who's getting paid by them. I mean,
maybe the construction workers digging up the ISP.
That was one of the things I wanted to talk about and wanted to like, not debate, but like think about, just like just to put a little thought in there. Can lobbyists lobby FCC chairmen, like, and commissioners? Is that, like, can they do that? Like, because that, to me, that seems like it would be a conflict of interest. If you're somebody that's making, like, directly making the legislation for certain things.
Well, there's an interesting thing, Andrew, is that whether or not that's legal, it can still be done, you know. Well, yeah, but I mean, like, from a legal standpoint, it, like, can they do it, and, like, will it, like, how do I put this?
can they do it? And if they can, I don't know. I can't think of
here's
what I'm
the
trying
thing
to
is
say.
I would say that whether or
I'm
not
sorry
they
for interrupting you.
can, doesn't matter, they will, because, I mean, think about this, Andrew. If you're working at an ISP, say you're the CEO of Comcast or the president, and you look at the FCC chairman and you say, hey, let's go out for dinner, and you buy him like really expensive dinner, and you're like, oh, have some of my old shoes and whatever.
Oh,
I'm just saying, and they could
you
be
know how to
brand
get
new.
me.
They could be brand new, you know what I mean? But it's just like, oh, I just gave him my old shoes, I didn't want to throw them
Oh
away.
man,
Um,
if somebody tried to give me some Asics, I would be like bought immediately.
so
They'd be like,
Andrew,
"Ooh, you want some
if
Onitsuka
Andrew's working at the
Tiger?"
FCC or in the Congress, buy him shoes. That's all he needs to be bought out.
If I'm a congressman, just send me like 6 pairs of Onitsuka Tiger, and you got whatever you want.
But like, you can't prove that that's a bribe. It's just like a gift, or I just took him out to eat.
Yeah, I see what you mean.
So
I guess what I was trying to say was,
can
like,
you bribe them? Can you lobby them?
Well,
I don't think
is
there's a
there a
difference between the
difference-
two words.
No. Is there a difference between some like bribing, or not bribing, but is there a difference between lobbying somebody that makes the decisions and somebody that only votes on them? Because I think that there's a big difference. If you can lobby the person that makes the decisions, that seems like it's super unjust. If you can lobby the person that just votes on them, then that's, I mean, it still is a little fucked up to
I
me,
feel
but
like
it makes a
lobbying
little
in
bit
general is just
more
kind of
sense.
morally
Lobbying is
unethical.
Lobbying
Like,
is horrible.
supposedly you lobby and you pay them money and they're like, okay, yeah, I really support you. Here's some money, listen to us. But it still seems morally great, even if you're doing it for good reason. Like, say you're like a co-op of local farmers, right? And you farm chickens or something. And you're like, make sure that the taxes on chickens don't go up. And like, here's a couple $1,000s to your like state representative or something. It kind of makes sense, but I feel like, it's always just going to go to the people who have more money. And that's always going to be corporations. So I feel
really
like
a bigger problem in its own
ideally,
right.
you don't want to be able to lobby at all. And like we just talked about with the shoes thing or whatever,
Right.
I mean, it's almost impossible to take gifts,
I mean, it's essentially a legalized bribe. Let's just
it is.
say that right now.
But
I mean,
even
there's no way of getting around that.
even if you made it illegal, let's say you did, lobbying's not a thing anymore, it would feel more it would feel better if you still were like this local co-op of farmers with chickens and you say, we don't want our chicken taxes to go up, and you all get together and you go talk to the governor or something, you know what I mean? Or you send a phone call and you're like, we have 40, 50 people from this county or whatever, you know what I mean? However high it goes up, whatever.
Right.
And we think that will negatively affect us. And if the congressman has to take all that into account, which is what they supposedly are supposed to do, that would be ideal, where they just listen to people and they figure out what's important based on the information that they're given from people of opposing sides or whatever, instead of just who can give them money. Now, some people probably can't get bought, but people still have to pay for their campaigns in some ways,
Right. And that's essentially how they do it.
Even if you're not
lobbying money.
Even if you're not just like a corporate puppet, you still have to take some money from somebody.
Right.
So
that's a systemic problem, and I mean, it really exacerbates the issue here because there really is none of this happening without any of the politics happening.
Yeah, because this kind of net neutrality stuff, and it's not necessarily net neutrality, but always bills being passed that are going to gut the internet, or like have these really, really vague censorship rules so they could say, oh, you have to pay more for YouTube because, YouTube has videos and videos could be bad or something. You know what I mean? I don't remember exactly what the bills are, but
right.
That's because people are lobbying these congressmen to make these bills. Now, this one's going through the FCC and not the Congress, but it's still the same kind of thing. The FCC didn't just bring this up without any money being thrown their way. I highly doubt it.
And you have to think, these are not people that are, young and our age. These are people that are old enough to have made all of that money. So these are old people that are making all of these, lobbying decisions, essentially. I mean, let's just call it that. They're lobbying decisions, when that money changes hands, you're basically, barring something doesn't happen, like, they could take the money and they could say, nah, fuck it, I'm not gonna, I'm sure there's rules to doing that. I'm sure.
Well, they probably just don't pay you again.
Right. But I mean, regardless, if we're wrong about that, leave it in the comments. But yeah, I mean, regardless, if that happens,
Yeah, I think the whole system
Anyways,
is kind of messed up based on.
So 1996.
Okay.
Telecommunications Act. Telecommunications Act, whatever. Signed by the bill himself, the bad boy Clinton. It creates two categories. One category the first category is telecommunications services,
okay.
aka common carrier services. This is a important term.
Okay.
Common carrier services such as traditional phone service. Basically, the FCC can regulate anything in this classification, common carrier.
Right.
And then the second one being information services, which are anything that involve the storage, processing, and publishing of information online. The FCC has little authority here. Basically, there was a huge tech boom because of this. This was seen as a big deregulation.
Mm-hmm.
It basically allowed all of these companies to band together and form monopolies again. Because before there were these companies like I think it was like NCSoft or iSoft, whatever. All of these like web companies, they had like 500,000 people subscribed to their service.
Right.
Basically these were the first people that were providing
like
infrastructure, kind of like AOL, yeah. But these were like much smaller companies
before
like,
AOL, probably.
Yeah, they were basically, I think, what came to be known as AOL.
Okay.
So they all banded together, being bought out by whoever, certain ones becoming bankrupt, who knows. So they all become monopolies. And then AOL, there's a AOL Time Warner merger in 2000, just 4 years after the Telecom Act.
Okay.
It was a $183 billion merger, making it the largest business merger in history. Okay. Crazy shit. $183 billion.
Crazy.
Just think about that. Like, they have money.
Nuts, yeah.
There's no reason that any of this should even be going on. The only reason that any of this is going on is because they just want more money.
Right.
They want to be able to make more money.
Right.
When you're a chairman of a company like that, you're in the hot seat. Mm-hmm. You have all of these investors that are just basically begging you, like they're make us money, make us more money. Are you making us more money this time? This quarter, are you going to make us more money?
Right.
If you don't make your investors money, you can actually get in trouble for that. There are like laws that are put into place to protect investors from shady CEOs and chairmen.
Right.
So like this kind of thing, like, I mean, this happens a lot. So on my timeline, there's kind of a variation in times. Like I pretty much just picked the ones that I thought were
interesting, pertinent,
like violations of like a neutral net kind of thing by these companies. So I'll just go ahead and start in 2005 with Madison River. There's this company, Madison River Communications Corp. Okay. And there was like a bunch of calls coming in from Vonage, the phone company.
I remember, yeah,
like the internet phone company.
Yeah.
What was their thing?
I don't know.
Vonage or something. I don't know. So there was like 200 customers being blocked, like from making internet calls, and a lot of them that was their only form of telecommunication.
Right.
It was like for 911, like if they needed to call somebody.
Yeah, they signed up for the internet phone instead of a regular phone. Right.
Right. Yeah. So they were, using it as their home phone. And that was what Vonage kind of boasted, was that, internet phone, but it can be your home phone.
Right.
It's whatever. So they get busted for it. The Madison River Communications Corp. It was like a subsidiary of them. They get busted for that, and they eventually settle for it. And the chairman of the FCC, Michael Powell, stated, and this is like, to me, this is a quote that stands out. This is a fucking quote that stands out. The industry must adhere to certain consumer protection norms if the internet is to remain an open platform for innovation.
Good.
Protect the consumer. Why are we not protecting the consumer? Why are we protecting the corporations and the companies? These companies don't give a shit. I mean, they make so much money, it doesn't matter to them.
Right.
So the FCC orders them to stop blocking immediately.
Right.
In the same article that I was reading, another company called Nuvio Corp, which I think was also some kind of online phone software, was experiencing slowdowns and degradation in service. And the chief executive, Jason Talley, said that when his customers complained to the cable companies, they were told that if they switched to the cable company's voice service, the problems would disappear.
Wow.
How shady is that?
Yeah.
I mean, there's really no way to prove that. It's very hard to prove slowdowns and degradation in service, especially back then.
No,
like
even now,
2003 or 2005.
I had issues with Comcast when I first started streaming on Twitch. It would be like 1 a.m. to 3 a.m., somewhere in that time every night. After I'd been streaming for about an hour, I would just get throttled. And it's possible that someone on the same network line or whatever would just maybe a bunch of people started watching Netflix, or someone started running a crazy torrent or something. But it's
it's unlikely though.
It's so unlikely because it happens at 1 to 3 a.m., which is no one should be on the internet then. And even if they are, one person with whatever limit they have, or let's say just by chance somehow it was 5 people, 5 neighbors or something, or someone down the line, or a company, a service that would reboot their servers every night or something. That shouldn't happen.
Affect you though.
Right. Well, I'm just saying the companies are always claiming that we need to throttle things so that more information can get through, because they say it clogs up. Whether I doubt that ever even happens, but let's just say that it does. I'm just entertaining the thought.
Right.
That shouldn't affect me for the internet that I'm paying for, even if it's not their fault and it is some company running some servers and they're pulling a lot of information. That shouldn't be affecting me. I should still be getting the speeds that I get, but I'm still pretty sure that they were throttling me because they didn't like that I was constantly uploading and downloading all the time, streaming.
Right.
For hours at a time, and they would slow me down or whatever. And all I thought was I can't call them. What am I going to say? Are you throttling me? What are they going to say? No, I can't prove that.
The only way that you can do anything about that is by lodging complaints.
The big thing for me, Andrew, is that I would just continually be throttled, and my internet would be so slow I couldn't stream. Everything was lagging. And then as soon as I would open up speedtest.net and start running a speed test on speed test, the common one that they always say the ISPs know about, and so they give you faster speeds, I would run that one, and my problems would go away. And then after about 10 minutes after closing out a speed test, it would come back. And then I would open up speed test and run it, and all of a sudden...
I mean, it could be that they have some kind of script that senses, or that knows...
Exactly.
Because, all of that stuff is sent to them, it reads the packet or whatever, and then determines where to send the signal. So, it easily could just
that's
read
what they
that
say
and be
is that...
oh, spark this dude's signal real quick.
Yeah, they want people to think that their internet's going great. And there was another site that a lot of streamers used. They might still. It was called testmy.net, and it's supposed to be more accurate because the ISPs didn't know about it. It was a different kind of test, so it was supposed to be more accurate because you're actually doing more realistic downloading and uploading. And those tests, which are supposedly more realistic and seem closer to the true speeds that I get, are nowhere close to the speedtest.net stuff. Like the speedtest.net always gives you like crazy speeds that aren't even close to realistic.
It's always inflated numbers.
And it didn't used to be like that either. It didn't used to be like that
too. And it's especially for me, part of that is because when it's downloading, it's like downloading from a Time Warner server. So like it may say that I'm getting, 300 megabits per second, but it's because I'm getting 300 megabits per second downloading
straight from them.
A Time Warner packet from a Time Warner connection onto, through a Time Warner.
Yeah, there's no
Wi-Fi
back and forth thing.
Yeah, it's ridiculous.
But yeah, I'm pretty sure that the ISPs are just kind of shady. And you know what's weird? When you must have it written down. When did the net neutrality bill that I think Tom Wheeler put into motion in the FCC a couple years ago?
The first one or the second one?
The one that they're trying to repeal now. I think it was Tom Wheeler put it into place.
That one was in 2015. There was one in 2014.
So
they put an open internet order out, right?
Okay.
All right. Okay. So I'm thinking of the open internet order. So they put an open internet order. I'm gonna get into that. Hold up.
All right,
okay.
You can go for
let me go through the timeline real quick.
I was just gonna say that bill might actually line up directly with me being throttled.
If you're talking about the 2015 Title II, then I think that was put in by Tom Wheeler.
Yeah, that seems to line up exactly with when my throttling stopped happening.
Could be.
Because I think at that point it would be illegal, right?
Yeah.
So maybe.
Yeah. Even before that, though, I mean, if it was in the right period, I think the open internet order, the first one stated that they had to stop blocking and throttling, but
they were supposed to, but maybe this had higher stakes. They didn't.
Yeah.
Anyways, it stopped eventually,
and that's what they proved. So in 2007, this was just one that I got from this guy's not podcast, but he had like a PowerPoint presentation, and on it he had that there was a live web recording, like a stream of a Pearl Jam concert, and AT&T muted a bunch of like anti-government stuff in the song, like it was like something against like George Bush or something, and they admitted to doing it later and like doing it in other occasions.
Why were they protecting George Bush?
Yeah, I don't know.
That's kind of weird.
Yeah, but censorship nonetheless.
Right. Always bad.
So then in 2007, BitTorrent was being blocked by Comcast, and Comcast was eventually found guilty of the violation of the FCC's 2005 net neutrality principle. They challenged it in 2008 at the DC Court of Appeals. I don't know what happened with that. I can't remember. 2010, the chairman, Gina Chowsky, announced that there would be a proposal reclassification of the broadband, or a proposed reclassification of broadband as a telecom service. Remember, I had talked about there was two classifications: telecom and information services. Information is unregulated, usually by the FCC, or very, very
they didn't have much
little regulation. Telecom, lots of regulation.
Right.
So they were talking about relisting broadband as a telecom service instead, so that the FCC would have the authority to implement net neutrality bills and rulings later on. So in 2010, they put in a open internet order, which stated that there would be no blocking, no throttling, no fast lanes, no prioritized content.
Right.
In 2011, Verizon challenged it, arguing that they have no authority to implement it. And I think later on, I'll get to that. In 2012, AT&T blocks FaceTime for mobile users that didn't sign up for the mobile share data plan.
Right.
I don't know if you ever heard of that, but that was like a big deal at the time. They eventually agreed to stop blocking FaceTime. I was never a customer of AT&T. I've always been a Verizon boy. Right. So it's never, that didn't really affect me, but I sure was affected by the Netflix deal, though. I'll tell you what, I was getting horrible Netflix on my phone. It was like the worst garbage ever. And then
Right.
whenever they were like paying for it, I guess, suddenly it got better.
Right.
Anyways, so during oral arguments at a DC Court of Appeal, Verizon said the only thing preventing it from charging content providers from reaching Verizon subscribers, i.e., me,
Right.
is the open internet order that was put out in 2010. So they blatantly came out and said the only thing stopping us from charging, Netflix and Hulu and, Discord
Right.
from, being able to be used by our customers is this order that's going on right now. So in 2014, the internet order is overturned by the Court of Appeals, but the FCC announces that it's exploring like an authority to create network neutrality rules by reclassifying them as the common carriers, like I had said before.
Right.
So they still hadn't done this yet. And then I guess in 2014, T-Mobile exempted some music streaming sites from its data cap. So like ones that I guess it was in cahoots with.
Right.
And then, like I had said, Comcast and Verizon began receiving the payments to lower the video quality issues. So in 2015, gosh, just coughing like crazy right now. So the FCC passes the Title II net neutrality rules, and then subsequently issues the open order. And I think that's what you were talking about with Tom Wheeler. I think
was that who did it?
Put that.
I think it was
put
him.
that into motion. But so what this did was, one, ban paid prioritization. Fast lanes will not divide the internet into haves and have-nots, is what they said. 2, ban blocking. Consumers must get what they pay for, unfettered access to any lawful content on the internet. By the way, this was verbatim of what it said in the actual order.
Yep.
3, ban throttling, which is, degrading access to legal content and services can have the same effect as blocking and will not be permitted. FCC denies carrier petition to stay open internet. Oh, so essentially they all got together and they like all of these telecom companies got together and created like a petition to like stay the open internet order. And they were basically like, no, this is law. This is going to happen.
Right.
Which basically brings us to now. Right now there is a man as the chairman of the FCC, Ajit Pai. I don't know if I'm saying that right. It might be Ajit,
but
it might be, I've heard it Ajit, Ajit, Ashit. I don't know. Whatever his name is. We've got this guy in there now that is not really given a really very good like reason to any of it. I mean, his whole ideal was that repealing this Net Neutrality Act will increase broadband competition among other...
Yeah, and that's very important because before these acts, there was no competition either. So why would it come now?
Yeah, it really doesn't make much sense. I mean, I get that you would want to deregulate because deregulation is great for companies because companies can essentially do whatever they want. You're free to, it's a free market, whatever. But at the same time, we need to be protected as consumers and as people that, I mean, at what point does the internet become, a commodity? Is it a utility or is it a commodity or is it something completely different than that? Is it something that's on its own completely? Is the internet a human right? I mean, these are all things that you have to think about. I mean, if however many billion people are connected to the internet, and everybody, you need a job to, I mean, you need the internet to get a job now. You need the internet if you want to go to school. You need
Right.
the internet for pretty much anything
Right.
you do nowadays, aside from, like drinking beers and hanging out with the homies. Like, and even then, you need the internet to hit the homies up.
Yeah.
So it's just ridiculous to me that would even be a thing. But so he's claiming that this is gonna spur growth in that industry, and really that doesn't make any sense, because what we saw whenever it was completely deregulated was a boom and then a huge crash. We saw a boom, but the boom ended up being just a bunch of companies turning into monopolies. All that happened was that a couple people or a couple companies saw a really good chance to take control of the industry and to get really, really rich. And that's why we have the big four or whatever it is, big five now.
It's crazy. And like deregulating it, I mean, even though they claim, less regulations, everything will work itself out, free market, with what we know of how, at least for me, I know how Comcast works and how they act. I don't trust them one bit. Like, they charge you, like you said, like $5 or $10 a month to rent their modem, but you can buy, and it's terrible modem most of the time. It has terrible firmware. Yeah. It's always having problems. I have to restart mine at least like once every couple of weeks, every month.
I still have it. Haven't bought a new modem yet. I'm going to, but it drops. It's a modem router combo, and it drops the Wi-Fi like all the time. Like, I'll just be sitting on my phone looking at something, and then like all of a sudden it'll just get super slow, and then it'll stop working completely, and it'll say it disconnected.
Yeah.
5 minutes later, it connects again.
Yeah, I used to use the Wi-Fi on mine, and then I don't know if I had too many new neighbors move in or what happened, but all of a sudden one day, no signal downstairs anymore. It would have too much interference, and the Wi-Fi just doesn't work. It's like you need like a special router, because when you're living in like near, like you at an apartment or me here, I guess there's too many signals going around and it causes like all kinds of interference. But it's like they could just give you a better router. Like, people live close. It's a city. You know what I mean?
Right, yeah. I mean, what are you going to do if you live in New York? There's people on top of you.
Yeah, it's crazy. And then they charge you monthly fees for it. And I bet you it costs them like, I'd say it's like $50 to make that. It would probably cost them less because they probably have all the people who make it without having to pay costs. But if you bought it at a store, the router. If you bought it at a store, it would probably cost like $50 to $70 max, right? And they're charging you like what, $10
Black Friday.
a month? $10 a month or something? And it's like after a year, you've already overpaid that by like 50%.
Yeah.
And then not to mention, you buy your own router. Anthony's had this problem, and I had this problem with one of my old ISPs. If you ever have an internet trouble, if the internet's down, if they are throttling you, if whatever's happening, and you've bought your own router that works flawlessly and it's perfect, they will never come out to help you. They will always blame your router and say, use our router.
Right.
Eventually, I'm sure they'll come out, but you probably have to call them like 5 times. I remember when I had my own router, they'd be like, no, it's got to be the router, Just restart your router. Switch back to our router. Okay.
I've never had connectivity problems. I've always been able to connect to the internet. So for that, I've been very lucky. I'm just strictly talking about my current place now and my place before. I've lived in a ton of apartments and houses and everything in between. At this point, I've had horrible internet. I've had amazing internet. Just the last 2 years, I've been getting fantastic connection, but I've not been getting. I mean, obviously the router's shit, but I mean, I'm hardwired in, so it doesn't matter to me. I mean, I could get a new one.
I don't have any problem since I'm hardwired in, but
yeah, I've been too lazy and I've been hardwired in, so it's not a big issue. But I mean, I wanted to go back to one of the things that you had said. Even going farther back, regulation is something that, I mean, even I would love to say that we don't need regulation and that, we can.
Yeah, I don't like having to have the government decide what we should and shouldn't do for companies, for people, whatever. But
I don't like that either.
It's obviously a necessary evil. Like,
it's 100%.
I'd say the people are worse than the government. You know,
if you go back in time, let's even go back. This might not be the best parallel to go with the tech industry, but Upton Sinclair, when he wrote his book The Jungle, that was a book that, I don't know if you've heard about it, but it's a book that essentially chronicled a meatpacking industry without regulation in, I think, early 1900. It was like 1903 or something, like somewhere around there.
That went.
So there was no regulation in the meat industry at the time, and basically what he wrote about was just this disgusting, horrible place. I mean, rats would fall into the meat thing and they just wouldn't do anything about it. I mean, there was just meat on the floor that they would pick up and put back. I mean, it was horrible conditions. The places were not clean. Like, you really have to read the book to get the full idea. I mean, it was...
I should check it out.
Absolutely horrendous. And it completely changed the way that the meat industry is ran currently. I mean, that book...
And even now people are complaining about how, they farm chickens and
right.
whatever else.
And my point about all of that was, why would we let
these people do what they want?
Why would we let these
Who's going to self-regulate? Right? Who wants to put their own...
Why would we let these telecom companies regulate themselves when, we've seen it with the meatpacking industry. We let the meatpacking industry regulate themselves. What happened? They were fucking, letting animal crap and like poop and stuff get into the meat. People were getting sick.
Yeah, and it's like, if you're not regulated, what incentive do you have to do the best for your customers?
You say you
have all this competition, and someone will be like, our meat is... never touched the ground, never had a rat in it, right? But the problem is you get the big companies that make a ton of money because some people just don't care or look into it, and then they buy the smaller companies until every company is, doesn't have to worry about this competition and doing the right thing. They're worried about what's the easiest and cheapest way to get this done, right?
The only way that you can get more competition is a level playing field. I mean, if you really think about it, like, a level playing field is... You have to have that, because if you're like, for example, if you're trying to get more competition, like, I really don't think you're going to get it by, charging companies for fast lane usage, because, only the companies with a lot of money are going to be able to use the fast lane.
And they're going to need a fast lane to make enough money to compete with you.
Even if there was a company, like, let's say, Netflix came out and it was like a competitor to Pornhub or something.
Okay.
And they really, really wanted to be like the new thing, but they didn't have necessarily the capital to pay for a fast lane.
Right.
So instead, maybe they get some viewership, but they're not going to get the viewership that they really could with the fast lane.
Right.
Because their content wouldn't be, it would be buffering. It would be, in some Pornhub package or something.
Yeah.
It would just be ridiculous.
No, and that's the thing with you talking about you needing money. Like, they say, get rid of the regulations, you'll get more competition, you'll get... I don't know what they mean by that. Do they think more companies are going to come up? Because, look, Google couldn't even get into the industry. With Google trying to do fiber, they got fiber in, a few cities? But in most of the cities, they put it in. And here's another point on how we know we're being overcharged. Maybe Google's selling at like a loss, but they put that Google Fiber in and they're selling it at a significantly cheaper price than...
It's I want to say it was like $70 or something for 1 gigabit.
Right, and that's like the same price or less than a lot of the higher end cable packages.
That was less than what I was paying for 300.
Yeah, and the thing is, what you saw when Google did that was, you'd say, okay, well, maybe Google's selling at a loss, right? And eventually they'll have to hike up the price, or they're just doing it for the good of the people. But as soon as Google Fiber came into a city, Comcast, Time Warner, whoever it was, reduced their prices to match Google. Because they're not losing money, they're making way more than they need.
Or they said, hey, we're going to bring fiber as well. We're going to do that too now.
Right.
But one thing about Google, though, that... essentially fiber, they're charging you to install it. So like whenever Trevor got Google Fiber installed at his house, I think they charged them like $800 or something, or like $1,000
but that's not even
to install it.
Even crazy when you think about Like they're digging
But
up the whole
they
street
had
and
to
all
like
this
go
stuff.
and install it like in the house too.
Right,
Because
exactly.
like you don't have any. Everything is that Ethernet connection. So everything has to be changed to be whatever.
But even $1,000, that's like 10 months of a regular internet. That's like a year of like an internet speed or like price. You know what I mean? And you're going to get it cheap. You're going to save that money over the course of 2-3 years.
Right. Yeah.
So it's just
I wasn't
crazy.
saying that it was.
No, but that's what I'm saying.
For transparency's
these
sake.
people say we have to make our money back on all the stuff that we're doing to put the infrastructure down on, and then they're charging us exorbitant fees for our internet, and Google can do it and charge you what seems like a fairly small cost for the installation and everything, all things said. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
so,
and the funniest part about that is that they didn't even necessarily have to put the infrastructure in. I mean, maybe for new developments, obviously, yes, but for everything else, I mean, they've already bought up all of these, these companies that put in all of this infrastructure in the first place. All they have to do is manage it. So what happens is the customer buys, whatever package, they're paying $70 a month. So you're paying $70 a month essentially just to have that connection,
right?
Just the ability to connect to the internet. And then they're turning around, or they were, what they want to do is they want to turn around Netflix and say, hey, by the way, now you got to pay us more for this fast lane usage, and you got to pay us more so that your content can be, unobstructed.
Right.
And then they turn back around to us and they say, hi, by the way, a couple years from now, we're gonna go ahead and charge you a package for any kind of streaming stuff because it takes up a lot of data. Oh, and by the way, now you have a data cap. You can only download 100 gigs a month or something.
Right, that's crazy. I have a data cap.
You get a 100 megabit connection, but you can only download 100 gigs a month.
Right. Yeah, and I've felt the pain of the data cap that Comcast actually introduced recently. Another thing, again, they put a data cap on now. It's like, it doesn't cost you any money for me to use your internet now that it's laid down. You don't need to charge me extra and limit how much I can use.
There's not an like a amount of data that's just sitting, like there's not like they don't have like a truck coming into the warehouse and they're like, oh, is that the data? Yep,
exactly.
We got a limited amount this time, so you're gonna have to tell your customers that they can't use over 100 gigs or something. And they're like, oh yeah, okay. Hey Tom, go tell all the customers there that they're not going to be able to use more than 100 gigs, eh? And then
it's
you get
just crazy,
that,
and then
that kind of horse shit.
The other thing is when they say competition will come and there's other companies, what happened with Google when they're trying to put it in certain cities, I don't remember what city it was exactly or if it was a lot of them, but in some of the cities they try to put Google Fiber in, they've been getting in these huge lawsuits where Comcast or Time Warner or whoever owns the internet in that city is just dragging them through the mud and charging them extreme amounts of money, making them just waste, millions of dollars on court fees and time.
Right.
To the point where Google just said, I'm not bringing fiber to this city anymore. Like they literally stopped them because they just made them pay lawsuits over and over again. And Google probably would have won eventually because like you can't stop someone from starting a company. Is that legal? But
I mean, and that's really essentially what you just said right there is their tactic for trying to get the legislation for this overturned.
Right.
I mean, they just keep trying.
Right.
You just keep, I mean, if Google comes into their town and wants to put fiber in there, then they hit them with as many lawsuits as they can until they leave.
Yeah,
Same thing happens here. Let's hit them with as many times as we can, appeal this or, whatever.
Yeah, and if they weren't overcharging for internet and making so much money that they don't know what to do with, then they wouldn't have the amount of money that they can just throw at these legislators over and over and over and over and over again and throw at Google for these lawsuits. Because they know they're not getting that money back. I mean, they're spending the money on the lawsuit too, and what are they gaining out of it?
Yeah.
They're just pushing Google out.
It's not like this hasn't happened before. I mean, SOPA,
Pippa.
and PIPA. I mean, there's been other.
It'll keep happening. It will.
Yeah. I don't know.
I would
all
say
of the bills. I know there's actually a couple of them that
if it stays Title
to
II for like 10 or 15 years, until all the people who are working in these corporations are out somewhere else and it's new people and that's been the norm, we'll start seeing like less of it. I mean, there still might be people trying to do it a while, but you don't see people having all these bills all the time trying to get rid of the Telecommunications Act on whatever. It's not like we're trying to make electricity become like the internet where you get packages for fast lanes now. It's like it's kind of the norm now, and everyone's settled in, and that train is shipped.
I mean, isn't that basically kind of what happened with cable? I mean, they basically deregulated cable and said, essentially cable companies can do whatever they want. Like they just said like, hey, whatever you want to do. And they came up with packages.
Right.
I mean, how is that not exactly like what would happen with, I mean, if you look at it, like people didn't have packages back in the, the 70s, 60s and 70s. Right. You just had channels. You just changed the channel and you got whatever, It was just a method of bringing, it was just like I said, with it just being the bandwidth or just being the connection. It's just the connection.
Right.
And that's how it should be. The content providers are a completely different thing. There's no reason that your ISP should be your content provider, or not even provider, your content curator and your content supplier,
right.
Or content connector, whatever. Right. It just...
Yeah, and it's like, if you don't have these regulations, people will keep finding packages and all these weird ways. Like, if packages are just going to be the beginning if nothing ever changes. There'll be more than packages in the future, because you look at the obvious...
Pay $4.99 to access this. You
right.
could see that,
And it's like, you look at things like right now, the gaming industry, right? Just in the last 6, 7, 8 years, we've seen huge changes to the monetization schemes because there is no regulation, right?
Right.
First you buy a game. That's it. Then you buy a game and you get an expansion. Cool. They add more content later on. You pay again. Maybe it's not quite worth the same price as the main game, but you want to support the game and play more of that same game you love. Then you have DLC or whatever. Okay. Some people were starting to think it got a little bit crazy because some of the DLC was expensive and silly and, not seemingly worth what you were paying for. Then you get cosmetic DLC, which it's kind of crazy that people pay such crazy amounts for small bonuses and just a game. But it's cosmetic, so it doesn't matter. And then you have what's happening now with something like Battlefront. Obviously, everyone knows about all that nonsense, right?
Right.
But you now have a game where you're paying $60, you're buying a game.
Even more. I mean, $80 if you're...
Or for the bigger, and plus pre-order bonus, cost, whatever, all that. Plus there'll probably be DLC that would probably cost money at some point. And then they
said that there was going to be no DLC that costs money, but
okay,
I think you could be right. There's a possibility that they release,
or they could release cosmetics on top of that added,
Or
and
they
so
yeah, exactly.
Then they release these boxes that basically are your progression system that you've paid $60 and now you're paying to get ahead, or you can spend the next, if you're a normal person working a job and you play 2 to 4 hours a night, and that's even pretty excessive probably for a normal human who's got more than just a job, like a family or whatever. It's going to take you, if you're doing 4 hours a night, they said it takes 40 hours to unlock a lot of this stuff. And that's into one single game. And you're probably not having that much fun at the beginning because you don't have all the stuff to unlock. It's
right.
You basically make a game that's unfun. You pay $60 to have or kind of fun experience unless you spend even more money. Right. It's just and that's, you think longer, it's going to get worse than that if there isn't anything. You know what I mean?
You want to know what the funny thing about all this is? And I think it's hilarious that you bring that up, the Star Wars thing in particular, because I was reading a lot of people seem to think that this whole Star Wars loot box controversy and everything, loot box gate, whatever you want to call it. I'm coining the term right now, loot box gate.
Everything's gate now.
Yeah. whatever you want to call it, people are thinking that this is to distract from net neutrality, because the net neutrality stuff.
It is a lot of the people who get upset about that kind of thing.
Right. I mean, it's coming to a fever pitch. Like I said before. What was that?
My pencil. Falling into my plate from earlier.
You sure it wasn't somebody else's plate from earlier? It looks like maybe you got a lot of traffic through that room of yours there.
This is my temporary home.
Oh, yeah, okay.
I'm moving into my mansion next week.
Are you sure you're not just a temporary
I'm a temporary inhabitant in this home.
Okay.
Yeah, but it could be the same kind of people that they're trying to distract. I've always been, we're going to do a conspiracy thing on this podcast at some point, but I've always been of the opinion.
We're probably going to do a lot of them.
Yeah, I really like conspiracies, but I've always been the opinion of, yes, it could be a distraction, but you have to believe, and you have to be, you have to understand and believe that there's so much knowledge and there's so many people working together, like the lizard people kind of thing. Like they rule the world from behind the scenes. Maybe, but that's assuming that everybody, all these top people, the people who, people at EA, the corporate people
everybody
at EA,
has to be in on it.
The people working on the game. I mean, the people working on the game don't technically have to be on it, but you'd have to think that EA's in on it. You have to think Ajit Pai, whatever, the guy at the FCC knows about this. They know they're putting the bill on, and EA game has to come out at the right time, right? It has to come out at the right time.
I see, yeah.
And...
I didn't necessarily mean it like that. I meant it like maybe. I mean, this would be a similar to what you're saying. Like maybe like they paid the FCC paid some media outlet to start reporting on it.
Yeah, and then try to get the drum rolling on the Battlefront situation instead of them.
I'm friends with Ajit Pai over there at the FCC, and he's having a tough time. So why don't you make some some really crazy pieces on Battlefront 2 or something, or
right? No,
or
totally
Harvey
agree.
Weinstein.
And that's one of the things that, well, I don't know is as big of a deal as they claim it is, but a lot of people are worrying about on Reddit that a lot of accounts are bought and paid for by like Russians or companies or whatever to write these comments that are like shilling their stuff. Like like you said, if Ajit Pai, by whatever his name is, wants to get the heat off his back, he might have a bunch of buy or pay someone to have these Reddit accounts start spreading the net neutrality thing. And we've seen before where these really weird posts that get like really highly upvoted, and you're just like, what happened? This has to have been paid for, you know what I mean? Because one of the things on Reddit is once you upvote a post like say 100 or like 10 or 100 times, it goes into the rising category, and then it will naturally evolve up from there.
Right.
So
people just seeing it.
Theoretically, you could actually push that kind of thing. That people have seen in the past when like there's a new movie coming out. There'd be all these weird posts getting to the front page, and no one would notice it, but someone would be like, oh, here's me and my bird watching this trailer for the new movie, and it's like, okay, cool. Yeah. And then you're like, wait a second. Why is the trailer in the movie any part of this post, And then you'd see like all these other posts where someone's like in front of a TV and it's the same trailer, and you're just like, what? Like, is this coincidence? And it could be. Or there could be, because think about, you got like the NSA and you have all these other companies that, like Google probably, all they're doing is pulling information from people. There's massive like data banks of just like information, and figuring out how to get that to people and use that to advertise. So,
right,
it could really be a big deal. But
the end game is to get as many people to see as many things as you want, right? I mean,
right. And I've also heard that with the newer way of advertising, with finding what people like and pulling that information, like you would find the ideal spot for someone like, say me. I hate advertisements. I hate seeing ads. If I see a McDonald's commercial, it doesn't make me want McDonald's. I go to McDonald's on like a random day. It doesn't have anything to do with a McDonald's ad.
Yeah. I never follow ads unless it's something like and Amazon's great at this, but unless it's something picked out for 'em.
Right.
Like if it's something like if I see a Taco Bell ad, it's not gonna make me want Taco Bell.
Right. And it was like one time I was on YouTube and there was this ad on the site and it was just showing these like cool little knick-knack things. Like not knickknacks, but almost like these useless items that were really cool. Like one of them was like a keychain glow stick, but it looked awesome. And it was just like this little thing, like this big. So it was just like a silly little thing to add on. And I was like, that's awesome. And the whole site was full of like stupid stuff like that. But here's the thing. I didn't buy anything because I think about it, I'm like, I don't need this. It's cool. I'd love to have it, but I'm not going to spend money on that. Right.
Right. Yeah.
And the ideal situation.
Information on some random website either.
Right. And the thing with me, or what the advertisers would like, is to find something that I would actually buy and find a way to advertise to me organically. Like, you know, someone posting something on Reddit and I'm like, wow, that's awesome. I have to have that. Because I don't want to watch a YouTube ad because then I'm going to feel like I don't want to watch this because now I feel like you just wasted 30 seconds of my life, even if it's something I might want. You know what I mean?
Right. I
did
did want to go back and comment on something that you said because like you were talking about like the possibly automated comments or whatever.
Right.
There I was reading some news articles about this whole net neutrality thing. Apparently there was like 1 million comments that were fake
on the FCC page
that were pro anti net neutrality. Anti-net neutrality.
Right.
So like it was a bunch of like
paid for
like,
accounts and
probably somebody on 4chan or something, or like a bunch of people banded together because like a lot of them were like John Cena, like, and they all had like the same talking points. It was all like net
right, and that's one of the things.
Of this, that, blah blah blah. Jobs.
I have seen bots on Reddit where they're kind of convincing, and you read this comment and you're like, "Whoa!"
Yeah,
and then you look and like all their comments are nearly the same. That they're all a little bit different, and they seem like real comments. You know what I mean? And then there's some that actually take Reddit comments from the past and regurgitate them to get free points, free upvotes, so that they look like a real account. And so it's a bot that repeats real comments from real people from the past in the same circumstances. And so they look like a real person until you realize that all of their comments are stolen from other people. And
right,
then, and then they have this account that has all these points and upvotes. They look like a real person. And then they start like pushing some kind of agenda somewhere, you know?
Here, I found it right here for you.
Okay.
I'm going to post it in the chat. I don't know if this is the one that I was looking at, but it was like 1 million comments and like the FCC didn't give it, like they didn't care. Ajit
This guy doesn't care. Didn't it say he used to work for Verizon or something, or was a chairman on the board or something?
I don't know. I didn't research his background. All I know is that this is obviously because telecoms.
He's a telecom shill. It's very obvious.
Telecoms. I was reading telecoms lobbied like 48 million towards anti-net neutrality stuff in like 2014 or 2015.
That's ridiculous. That's
Insane.
$84 million they could have put into infrastructure and made our internet better.
Well,
you know what I mean?
And they had already, like you said, gotten a lot of money to put into infrastructure. So the fact that they didn't even use that money
and that's the problem with these companies where they're spending, you know, they get so much income. They don't spend it on infrastructure. They spend it on lobbying. They spend it on these legal bills of like keeping Google out. You know, one of the things I heard, I haven't researched it, but you have like, was it Susan G. Komen or whatever, the breast cancer charity, where most of the money that they get for charity that's supposed to go towards breast cancer research and help or whatever ends up going back into advertising for themselves to make them bigger. And also that they've sued other charities with that money. So they're taking this charity money, all this income, and instead of like putting it towards research and good things, they're suing other people and spending it all on advertising.
it's just never ending, right? I mean,
It's like the money's wasted in a way. They're wasting it on keeping themselves looking good and being big, instead of making themselves better. You know what I
it's
mean?
so weird because
They use
the
it to
older
drag
I
other people
get,
down instead.
yeah, the older I get, the more and more I find out these things like this, like finding out that Tom's wasn't donating the shoes to
Oh, really?
the kids in Africa or
At
whatever,
all?
or
Or just
you
like
know, it was something like that. I can't remember exactly what it is, but and I might not be right.
the
I don't
world
know.
makes me sad,
Don't
man.
take me,
Yeah,
take
and
me with a grain of
I don't
salt.
know for
But
sure if Susan B. Komen has sued another
I mean
charity, but that's what I
the
heard.
Clinton Foundation, all of these like foundations, like the Red Cross and everything, like they're like finding out that they're not actually using your money for what you think that
Right.
they're using your money for. They might be using your money for to take some guy to take his his paid vacation or whatever.
Right.
Your money might go to
Right,
something completely
that's
different,
part of the
some
problem. It all
special
comes down
interest.
to management and
If you
the
donate
levels
to
of
the Clinton
management.
Foundation, that could be that's they essentially were using that money to pay for Chelsea's wedding. Like,
Yeah, so it really comes down to like management and the levels, and sometimes it's not always malice, like, oh, we're gonna try to take this other company down.
yeah, sometimes it's
Each
just
time you have a
stupidity.
boss and then a person under them, that boss may spend the money not well, maybe gives people too many or not enough paid vacations, whatever. Maybe pays some people too much and they're taking too much of the cut for, like, let's say a charity, right? Maybe they're taking too much of the cut here, they're paying this guy too much. This guy's mismanaging it by trying to do some kind of advertising campaign that completely flopped and was a complete waste of money. You know what I mean? Like,
Right.
you have these big companies and like not just, malicious intent of waste of money, but also just incompetence sometimes. And like, all of it's natural. Like, it's going to happen in almost any company where money's going to be mismanaged small amounts of ways, not like severe bankrupting, but a couple dollars here, a couple dollars there, kind of wasted in a way,
Right. Yeah. It's like a casualty of having a company that size. But,
right. Or maybe you have
I
10.
mean, the larger amounts of money, though, like it's pretty easy to explain where that came from. Like,
right.
If large amounts of money in some charity organization is going missing, every year, it's pretty easy to assume that somebody's lining their pockets with that money.
Right.
Millions of dollars don't just disappear.
And you're right, but it's like at the same time, it's like, say you have leader of a charity, like how much do they deserve to get paid? I mean, they could do it out of the goodness of their heart, but they still need some money to live. Because you built this huge this charity, do you deserve to live in a nice house, or do you only deserve to live in like a small house?
Well, and then the definition of not for profit and for profit needs to be
for sure
looked at. And I mean, and a lot of those charities are tax exempt charities too, and are charities that are related to churches and everything, so they're not looked at in that respect.
Right. And it's like, think about a charity, like there's a lot of charities that nobody knows about to donate to because they don't advertise. So there should be some budget that you can put into advertising, because if you advertise correctly, you may make a bigger return, which can then go more into research or whatever. But what's the ethical amount? You can't spend 80% of your donations on advertisements. That's a bit ridiculous, right?
And I mean, like, back to the church scenario, like Joel Osteen, for example. Like, how much of, like, let's say, the average person gives like $100 or something.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know how much they actually give.
Right.
I'm sure it's a lot more than that. But
the average person probably gives like less than $100, I would bet.
Well, all I know is whenever I was going to church, I was forced to go.
Yeah.
Whenever I was going to church, my parents were, they were paying they were giving a certain amount every month. Like, it was determined by the pastor and my parents.
Well, it's like in the Bible or something. You're supposed to give like 10% of your income per month or something, right?
Well, I mean, I don't know what it was, but it was like a certain amount that they had agreed on. They were giving every month or whatever. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, assuming, whatever they're giving, like, let's say it's $100, how much of that $100 goes to Joel Osteen himself?
And how much does he deserve?
50 of it?
Right.
I mean, 30 of it? Like what's the number? Like, like if 100% of that
Goes to him.
donation, if like the whole donation from that Sunday and like half of it's going to him, then like that doesn't make any sense to me. Because I mean, isn't the donation supposed to be to, for the church? I mean, obviously some of that's supposed to go to him, but I mean, have you seen the house that the man lives in?
Yeah, well, that's the thing. Like, what's the ethical amount to take, right? And then especially, say he's got as big of a church as he does, right? Say he only should take, let's say he gets paid decent but not crazy, like $100,000 to $200,000 a year. That's like a good wage.
Reasonable.
That's like a good. That's like a really good wage.
Even like 300,000, I could be like, okay, yeah, that's reasonable. Right. The man gets up there in front of thousands and thousands of people. He's a televangelist. Whatever.
So, in his situation, let's say he's taking home 50%, right? If he was making 300,000, which is a crazy amount, I don't know how much he's making, how much any of this is going down, but theoretically, let's say he's taking home 300,000 a year and he's making 600,000. It's probably more than that. I don't know. Well, I don't know about him specifically, but say he's taking 50%. It's
definitely way more than. But yeah.
And you're looking at 600,000, so he's got 300,000 to throw wherever. Say the employees he pays maybe takes another 200,000, right? You got 100,000 left over. What do you do with that to invest in your church when he's already got like a brand new church and everything? Do you buy like 10 more grand pianos and like, I mean, what exactly do you invest in?
I don't think it would be buying things. I think it would be more of like
helping people,
that money into helping people, or
I think you're right. That would be ideal.
Or, I mean, obviously you wouldn't want to give away even for a church, you wouldn't want to give away all of your money every month to a charity. Right. I mean, that's just not. But if you were taking that money and trying to open up programs for like the youth or something.
Yeah,
let's
programs
say
for the
you
youth.
Opened a program that was free to all of the kids in your city or whatever, or not all of them, but it was free
or
for
at least the churchgoers
some kids
or
in
something.
your city, and all you had to do was, it was like like some kind of Bible thing or something. Right. Like,
yeah, I
don't
agree.
see why that wouldn't be something that you.
I agree. You're right. Programs would be ideal. I was just thinking, like at some point you might have so much money, there's nothing to spend it on anymore.
I see what you mean, and I agree, because I think that church in particular is pulling in so much money that they don't know what they can do with it. And
like, you could just open up more churches, but then what happens? You just bring in more money.
Right. But to me, wouldn't you expand? Wouldn't you want to put your church in like every city, or put?
Well, it depends, especially with certain pastors. It's not necessarily about your church and your brand. It's about you, and you can't speak at every church, right?
Well, and his thing is that, and a lot of those big evangelists, their thing is like they're prosperity preachers. So they're, God wants them to be prosperous, like if you don't have money, that's just because God doesn't want you to have money. Like that's their whole thing, is that like they have money because God wanted them to have that money.
God's plan.
It's God's plan. And I mean, if God's plan was for Joel Osteen and his, wife and 2 kids or whatever to live in like a 50-room mansion or whatever, it's like an $11 million house.
It's ridiculous.
Do you really need an $11 million house? I think if I had all of that money, I don't even think I would buy an $11 million house. I think I would be like, it would be too much for me.
Yeah, my aunt and uncle had not an $11 million house, but they had a 3-story house. And our family, my dad's side of the family that they're on is pretty big. So when they had this 3-story house with like a room for their 2 kids, their own room, then they had like 2 or 3 guest bedrooms, a bathroom on every floor. It was a decent sized house. It wasn't anything massive. It was like what you would find in like your middle income, average, like middle income
like
American.
Like a little higher, like higher middle class. Or something.
Somewhere around there.
Yeah.
And even with that, with their 2 kids, and then with people coming for Thanksgiving, you'd have, he has 3 brothers. One of them's my dad. And then one of them has 11 kids. Then there was my dad and me and my sister. And then I mean, there's two brothers, but that just alone, and not all the kids would come all the time, but when they would come to visit, even then it's not enough room. But that, they said, especially once their son moved out, they're like, this is too big for us.
Right.
And so they moved into what I still think is a pretty big house. That's fine. But it's like,
it's a downgrade for us. You're like, yeah, shut the fuck
no,
up.
I like it. I mean, you should have seen, I guess my house in Texas wasn't as big as that, but it was still way bigger than we needed.
Yeah.
So I've lived in a house like that, and it's like, their new house, they have something that they can do with every room. Like one of the rooms is a workout room. They have weights and a treadmill. So the space is all used. It's not too big anymore, but it's still a nice size house. And I remember our house when I lived with my dad, my mom, and my sister. We had, this like, you'd come in the main door, and there's like this big room to the left, and this big room to the right, and then this huge kitchen. And it's like, so you have the kitchen, which is big enough. There's a table in there, so we'd get around like this small round table to eat. And the kitchen was big. And then you had this dining room that was like pretty big. And then you have this other room to the side that we just like put couches in. And it's like, how many rooms? You got the living room over here where you can sit and watch TV. What is this room with couches for? You just sit and not watch TV? And then you're like, okay, I want to watch TV, so let's go sit in the other room with the TV. And then you're like, okay, the TV's distracting. Let's go sit in the non-TV room, And then you had upstairs, you had like this big open room with, we had couches and a TV, which is where I used to play my Nintendo 64. Ooh. But it's just like, it's too much room. And then, there was a main room, guest room, me and my sister's room. And then there was another guest room downstairs we used as like a computer room. I don't know. Like, people don't need so much space. The houses that most people own, like, I would say a lot of the people that I knew who lived in that neighborhood had like 2 kids. If you're going to live in those houses, you need like 5 kids or like 8 kids, like it's just ridiculous.
Yeah. We always lived in a kind of a more modest house. Like the house that I mean, we lived in like a starter home before that, but like the house that I grew up in was, just a like prairie style, like, long flat house with like three rooms. It was like 3 bedroom, 2 bathroom.
Yeah, I like smaller houses. Even when I was growing up in South Dakota, my mom didn't have a lot of money. When she got divorced, me and my sister, my mom moved up there, and it's like the houses were so cheap there. I don't know if they are still now. It was like $100,000, which that's still more expensive than like a lower end home.
Yeah,
but it was for that price. Like, there's upstairs had like a huge room, a bathroom, and a bedroom, a big bedroom. And the downstairs had 2 bedrooms, a bathroom, a living room, a kitchen, whatever. And then there was like this guest room. There was a deck outside. And then I had a basement with 2 more rooms and a bathroom and like this huge open area. And I was like, what are we going to do with all this room? And we didn't end up using the basement for anything. It was all just storage. So it ended up being like a normal size feeling house at that point. But it's like, there's so much space.
Speaking of room, I think you should probably clean yours. I think it's probably getting to around that time.
I do miss having a big room though now. Big house. Because like right now I'm living with my mom and my aunt. And I'm literally just like, my room is my space. Like, we don't have enough room for everyone to store everything. So my closet is like packed. And it's not like dirty packed, where people like throw everything in there and they open the closet and things are falling out. But it's like, I have a bookshelf in there with bookshelves and movies and everything. I have some bookshelves with like files and stuff I need to keep, like social security number, whatever, files, and then like whatever. And then I have like my suitcase, which I need whenever I go somewhere. And then I have a AC for my room that I hook up to the window. It's all taking up space. My closet's full of clothes. Like, and my room, like, I just have this small L shape. You guys can't see it because this is not my actual room. But there's this like little L shape where I can walk. And then my bed's up against the wall. My desk's up against the wall. It's a small space.
I've got a pretty decent amount of space.
Yeah, yours looking good.
Nowadays.
But no, I mean, it's okay. I do wish I had a little more space now. Maybe I shouldn't have been saying I have too much space in the past.
Well,
So,
that was net neutrality and bedrooms.
net
Bedroom
neutrality,
sizes.
lobbying, and bedrooms. I'm gonna move into this place back here.
Yeah, you should. I'm gonna.
Look how much
I'll
room
be
there
your-
is.
I'll be your next door neighbor in the ditch or in the underpass.
My next door neighbor's probably like 50 miles away. Every other house has probably been torn down.
And then your next door neighbor, like that's just one room. Like the rest of the house is gone. Like just the room survived. So it's like its own little
Yeah,
house.
you see how it looks dark back there? It's actually that's outside. It's nighttime.
That's night. That's nighttime.
I'm on the world that I live on is like an oval like this. So on this side it's dark, and on this side you can see the sun coming. Oh God, I'm doing it again.
Oh, you're doing it. You're doing the thing.
I keep trying to like point, and then I go too far, and I'm like, so that
You're gonna
way.
have to throw like a throwback up there, like a gif of you
A gif
doing
of
it
that
or
old thing. I
something.
still have it somewhere. Of the
Bam, right there.
Because we were, I was like trying to point at something. I was like, yeah, over there.
It's
then
you're
I-
like
and
it's
then I was
over
like-
there.
There. And you're like, what are you doing with your hands? Anyways, guys, I hope you enjoyed this podcast. It was
Yeah, I had fun doing it. That was awesome.
pretty informational, pretty more in depth than usual, but I think it turns out.
If it didn't make you mad, then I didn't do my job. So
Yeah, we'll see.
seriously,
Here's the thing,
I
Andrew.
just before we end this, I just wanted to throw this link in there because I think it's super necessary.
Okay.
There's a website. I'm gonna say it. I'm also gonna link it to you so that you can link it to them.
And we'll maybe
It'll
put
be
it over here.
right there. One of those places.
I don't know if I'm gonna go crazy with
it's-
the editing again.
It's by Free Press. It's a website called Save the Internet.
.com.
It'll let you, go to www.savetheinternet.com/net-neutrality. And there's a button there that says Take Action. If you click that Take Action button, it'll let you write to Ajit Pai himself. So just for all 15 of you, just go ahead and do that. If we can get all 15 of you guys to like this video and to send a message to Pi, we've done our job, I think. So
I agree.
please,
Yeah,
like
and here's the
subscribe.
thing. Andrew said, if I didn't make you mad, I'm not doing my job. The one thing is, this has been a big thing on the internet, so a lot of people probably already heard about it. So I don't know if they'll get mad all over again. But if you do, then he did his job
I
exceptionally.
hope you
if he
get
made him
mad anyways, because I've seen it and I get mad every time.
I just like at this point, I'm just kind of like so exhausted by it. I'm just like, again,
Everybody's so numb to just thing after thing happening nowadays.
right.
But anyways, see y'all next time.
See you guys. Hope you enjoyed it.